the heart and soul behind every business. Stories. Welcome to Business Story of the Week, hosted by me, Joshua Laurie. From setbacks to comebacks, from tragedies to triumphs, we inspire entrepreneurs through conversations that matter. Witness the magic that turns dreams into reality. Whether it's your career, business, or life, your success is always one story away. This is Business Story of the Week. And welcome back, folks. Welcome back to Business Story of the Week. I am your host, Joshua, here today again. And our question for today is small changes. Small changes to big dividends. It can, we all know that it can transform your life. But how is that really possible? Especially not just work, but our professional life, but our life in general, and just our professional changes in our lives. How can we make those small changes incrementally that leads to big dividends in our life? Well, I'm quite excited for our guest today. He's the perfect man to answer that question. Branch Isole is a visionary in the spiritual consciousness movement. As a writer, Branch identifies issues that encourage expression of different emotions. I want to get into that. His contributions include motives and actions within personal relationships, insightful essays on the power of personal accountability. I'm a big proponent of that for audience leaders to know, and short story poems that captivate readers. Combining a background of global travels and advanced studies, his insight offers unique spiritual and personal growth perspectives. Branch is the host of Small Changes, Big Dividends, a live stream interactive show and podcast on the Bold Brave Media Global Network. He graduated from Texas State University, did a postgraduate work at the University of Houston, and holds an Oxford MA Theology degree from Trinity Bible College. And today, Branch joins us to share his insight, perspective, and his wisdom. Branch, thank you for coming on the show. I'm quite excited. How are you doing?
Thank you, Joshua. It's great to be here. I've been looking forward to our time together. I didn't realize the distance would be so great. So I'm really pleased to be reaching across, the planet to try and help some of your listeners with some of their struggles.
Well, quite the big pond, by the way, in between the both of us, of course. And, it's still, it's quite exciting for me as well. It's one of the blessings that I see that I get to connect with, you know, leaders and, individuals like you who's had just incredible insight in all the achievements that they've made in their life. Branch, you have a background, advanced studies, theology, and, you know, uh, global, travels and all the experiences in life. What initially, this is quite a general questions, of course, but first of all, I also understand that you have experience with startups, three startups, um, quite successful as well. Talk to us a little bit about the origin story of Branch. What initially inspired you to delve into the world of startups, but also delve into the world of writing and personal growth? What is the story of Branch Isole?
Thanks, Joshua. Well, I grew up in the 50s and 60s. My dad was in the military, so we traveled, every 3 or 4 years, you just automatically got a suitcase out and started packing because you knew you were going someplace.
Hmm.
And I was born in Japan. I lived in the States, and then I went to high school in Germany, finished in California, and then I went to Texas to go to college. Uh, got a degree there. I was a high school teacher,
Hmm.
and then I was a middle school assistant principal. And then I realized, well, there's no way I can make a living, doing this. So I went to work for a textbook publisher
Okay.
selling teachers' textbooks. And that was
Hmm.
my entry into corporate sales. I was really successful, learned a lot, learned about sales and marketing.
Hmm.
But I also learned that it really wasn't for me. Uh,
Huh.
I've always sort of been a rebel. And although I can work, under authority and hierarchy,
Hmm.
I don't do it real well for very long. And
Okay,
so
interesting.
I left the corporate world. I was very
Hmm.
successful, but it cost me a lot in my personal life.
Mm.
And so I decided this is not for me. So I left that and I went on a 5 year trek to sort of figure out who I was.
Okay.
I had learned in corporate world that the truth is not something that's real relevant a lot of times,
Right.
and that rubbed me a little bit wrong. So I went in search of the truth, and that led me to a lot of study and experiences with mysticism and Far East religions and
Right.
the
Right.
major religions. And uh, then I decided, okay, well, if I'm going to learn about spirituality and growth and the balance between the human me and the spiritual me, I need to go back to school. So I went back to
Mm.
school at midlife and
Mm-hmm.
got my master's in theology. And
Mm-hmm.
then I
Mm-hmm.
thought, okay, well, now what, right? I've got to do something. So I started a small company. We did specialty advertising. That's where you print on
Right. Right.
products, right?
Uh-huh.
Pens, coffee mugs,
Yes. Yes.
T-shirts, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And from that, I learned about business enough to get by, and I met
Wow.
somebody who was one of my vendors.
Okay.
And so he and I got to talking, and he said, "Well, why don't you come with me? And I've got this idea for a line of T-shirts, a sportswear line." And so I partnered up with him, and I was the sales end, and he was the production end.
Okay.
And
Okay.
he's still doing it actually after 40
Okay.
years, but
Uh-huh.
we got that going. And then I decided, okay, well, I need to move on, and I moved to Hawaii.
Right.
And while I was there, uh, I started a company with somebody that I had met out there, and we actually did two different companies with handmade
Two.
bath and body
Okay. Okay. Okay.
products.
Uh-huh.
She was the production end, and I was the sales guy.
Okay. Okay.
And so then uh, I thought, okay, well, the Lord was moving upon me to write a book.
Mm-hmm.
So we
Mm-hmm.
started a publishing company, and that's where the
Interesting.
writing started. And now,
Uh,
25 years later and 22 books later, here we are. And
wow.
so the startups were all small businesses, but when you're responsible for everything, you learn a lot, and you learn it
Wow.
fast, whether it's
Wow.
successful or whether you learn from your mistakes. But that was my background. Started out in corporate and then went into entrepreneurship and then went into the writing.
Wow. Branch, what a story. What a journey. First of all, 22 years later, and how many books later?
Well, 22 books. It's
Oh,
been it's been
22 books
actually,
later.
yeah,
Mhm.
26 years and
26 years
22
later and
books.
20 books later, we are here today, and you've gathered all that experience. If we were to put it into writing, Branch, we can go many different ways when it comes to your journey. We could go into the startups, we can go into, the things that help mid managers or entrepreneurs, and but really, I would love to focus more on personal responsibility and the consequences, in which one of where your works often focus on. I'm quite a proponent of personal responsibility as well, and that includes making mistakes, right? Owning the mistakes that you've made. That's part of being personally responsible, and of course, it comes with its consequences as well. Can you share to us some insight? I want to zero down on this, if you don't mind, Branch. Insights on why you believe personal accountability is crucial, for personal and professional success.
Yeah, it's something that you have to embrace it, and you have to understand why it is what it is.
Hmm.
And we live in a time and an age where um, it's easy to find excuses or to put the blame for our inactivity on someone or something else, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we see it at the highest levels of business and government.
Right.
And when we see our leaders who refuse to be accountable and take responsibility for their actions, it ripples down and it sends just the
Yes.
wrong message. And it makes
Mm-hmm.
it much easier, especially for young people and young
Mm-hmm.
people in business and young people in families,
Mm-hmm.
to skirt their responsibilities, right? Well,
Of
so and
course.
so
Of
does it and he
course.
gets away with it, so it's
Mm-hmm.
okay. So
Mm-hmm.
let me start by saying we all experience the same 12 lessons in life.
There you
And that's
go.
all there are. There's just 12 lessons in life, right?
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And life is a journey that throws us curveballs from these different lessons.
Yes.
Real
Yes. Yes.
quickly, let me explain what they are.
Of
Okay.
course.
And this is
Please.
a
Please.
hierarchy. So you think of a
Mm-hmm.
ladder, or a rock climber is a good example,
All
right?
right.
The
Fantastic.
first one,
Fantastic.
we are all born with insecurity,
Oh.
right?
Okay. Okay.
And
Okay.
this comes to our forefront and to our attention real early when we're children, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and we discover, well, I'm you know there's something wrong with me physically or
Mm-hmm.
mentally. I don't compare to other people. And here's the thing about insecurity: as long as we are in that place where we give power to our insecurity, right? And like, I'm not very tall. My next life, I know I'm going to be taller, but I've always been very short.
Mm-hmm.
So from early on, that can be a hindrance. And it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter what you are. I'm too short. I'm too fat. I'm too skinny. I'm not pretty enough. Whatever that internal feeling
Of
is
course.
that starts to develop when we're children, and we
Uh-huh.
cling on to that, right? And it gives us
Right.
an excuse why we might not be so successful at something, or why we, aren't good on the baseball team, or aren't good
Mm-hmm.
at dance. Doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter. As long as we grasp that insecurity and hold on to it, it stays with
Mm-hmm.
us and it
Mm-hmm.
holds us back. And that's just the
Mm-hmm.
simple fact. So the
Mm-hmm.
first thing we have to do is let the insecurity go.
Yes.
Well, how do you
Yes.
do that? You
How?
realize that there's nobody perfect, right? Everybody is grappling with some self doubt in their life and whatever that
Yes.
might be attached to.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
as soon as you let the insecurity go and you realize, there's other people who were short too, and they made it, so I guess I can. So, you get over that hump.
Yes.
Once you let go of that insecurity, I'm going to give you the other 11 real quickly so you can
Oh
see where
my
we're going.
goodness. All
The
right. Okay.
second one is personal responsibility.
There you go. Mm-hmm.
The next one is dependability. The
Dependability,
next one is reliability. This is followed
reliability,
by accountability. And this is followed finally by credibility.
credibility. Okay.
And those are the five foundational ones that we grapple with in our daily life,
Okay.
especially in our work situation, right?
Right. Okay.
And so once we are over this insecurity hump and we start to take personal responsibility, then the further down that path we go of being responsible for our words and our actions,
Yes,
then
of course.
all of a sudden, because we are responsible, we become dependable. We're more
Yes, you
dependable.
are. Yes, you
And
are.
when we're
Hmm.
dependable, people can rely on us. And
Precisely.
when
Hmm.
others rely on us, then we can be accountable both to ourselves, and to
And
our work
others.
and to our family.
Hmm.
And finally, when we've done the accountability one, then we have credibility.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so these are the five that we struggle with in our daily life, most often at
Right.
work. These are the work ones. And you'll
Hmm.
notice that these are pretty male dominant kinds of actions, right?
Right. Right. Hmm.
And and so the next one is risk. So I've let go of my insecurities. I'm now responsible, I'm dependable, I'm reliable, I'm accountable, and I'm credible,
Incredible.
right?
Hmm.
So now there's five others
Right.
on this ladder or on this rock climb that we're
Uh
attempting.
huh.
But
Uh huh.
in order to tackle those five, I have to risk.
Right.
I
Okay.
have to risk stepping outside of this nice foundation of these five. These five
Wow.
are very easy to measure, they're very easy to evaluate, and they're
Wow.
very easy to make our own,
Yes, of
right? But there's
course.
something missing. So
Mm-hmm.
I have to
Mm-hmm.
risk going beyond these five foundations.
Of course.
The
Of
other
course.
five are commitment,
Commitment.
trust, forgiveness, truth, and love.
Wow.
Now, you
Forgiveness,
notice
truth, and love.
these five are the esoteric ones, right?
Yes.
They're not the same structure, but they have a different kind of importance because these are the five that are who we are as a spiritual person.
Yes. In essence,
So
so to speak.
our
Mhm.
yes, our spiritual essence
Yes.
identifies with these. And so what
Mm-hmm.
happens is we risk stepping outside of our comfort zone of, I can do all these foundational things at work.
Yes.
Now I'm risking these other things that you'll notice they're more female oriented.
Mm.
Ladies, this is their foundation. This is their
Yes.
base, right? They're
I
good at
agree.
commitment. They're good at trust. They're good at forgiveness. They're full of love,
Mm-hmm.
and they want to come from the truth. And so
Mm-hmm.
this is where that division between male and female comes. And so the males are
Interesting.
real good at the first five.
Mm-hmm.
Females are generally better at the last five, right? And
Yes.
so this
Yes.
is why at work sometimes females have more difficulty because they're not used to that first five where it's all about your performance
Yep.
and what that performance means both to you
Yep.
and to your employer or to your job or to your company.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when you've accomplished and you understand how these work, then you realize, well, every day when I leave the house and go out into my world,
Mm-hmm.
I'm being thrown challenges or tests or
Of course.
temptations
Of
or
course.
curveballs by life that all include one or more of these five, right?
Yes. Of
Every
course.
activity, every interaction that I have with somebody is allowing me to grapple with one of these 12 lessons, right?
Mm.
So what happens is until we realize I can do these things and make them part of my life, we're trying to attack them or we're trying to receive them one at a time.
Yes. Of
And
course.
what happens is that's not what life does. Life throws these
No,
at
it
you
is not.
all day long in different
Mm-hmm.
situations. You're meeting with this person and you have to be accountable, right? And all of a
Yes.
sudden somebody else comes in the room and you've got to be willing to trust them. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what happens. And we spend our day trying to grapple or struggle with these 12 lessons of life. But
Mm-hmm.
what we've come to find and realize is every situation that you face is basically one of these at its core.
Yes. Wow. I
And
love that.
once we see that, once we realize that they all are interacting, all
Mm-hmm.
we have to do is take them as they come. And that way
Yes.
you don't get overwhelmed or bogged down, right? You
Yes. Of
recognize,
course.
okay, this is talking about my credibility. So that's how I respond, right? As a credible
Mm-hmm.
person. Or at home, maybe you're in a situation and uh, having an issue with one of your kids or something, and you know how that can kind of go off on the spur of the moment sometimes.
Yes. Yes.
And this is where we have to uh, deal with truth and love and forgiveness
There you
and
go.
commitment. So these 12 lessons in life are what we uh, this is our activity in our daily
Yes.
life. And
Yes.
once we realize that this is from birth to death, it's just these 12, but every
Mm-hmm.
situation is going to be challenging me or testing me of how I respond in one of these 12. And once we understand what the 12 are, then it becomes easy to identify what am I expected to do in this situation
There you
and
go.
what is the challenge? Am I
Precisely.
asking which one of these lessons am I going to need to focus on to accomplish what it is I want out of the situation.
I love that. Branch, first of all, a lot to unravel in there, but I love how you put this all together in like a ladder. You talked about it in a ladder. It's almost like flip for the man and the for the male and the female ladder, right? Except for that first step, which we are all born with insecurity. We are all dealing with that same insecurity. But it's almost like it's flipped because I love how it's, the first five or the first five after that first ladder step is a foundation for men. The last five are the foundation for women, and in the middle is always that risk of stepping out in both these comfort zones. It's a common thread in all of this, the common step rather. But the first really is a common step for everyone, and most really don't get across that. They really don't get over that hump, and you can see the struggle in their life is just constant. It's just they never get over this one step of the ladder, the obstacle. And it's sad, of course, and at the same time, it's not many are being taught these things, right? We're not exactly being have the not everyone quite have the privilege to know that it's simple. When you see it, you know it right away. But it's just a matter of also, again, being able to identify it and then stepping out of it, because there's that female energy, that male energy, what we're both good at. And I love how you said that having these latter steps, so to speak, to identify where we're at, then we'll be able to know what is it that is being asked of me at this moment. And that goes with work, that goes with life, whichever, where you are in your business, in your career, in your entrepreneurship. Maybe you're being asked to be more forgiving of your employees, or maybe you're being asked to, trust them a bit more, which most men aren't quite, not really good at that part again. But it goes the opposite, right? But Branch, I love a lot of these, but for you though, in your case, and this is something I want to ask you personally, if you were to pick from both sides, we're talking the male ladder and the female ladder, you pick one trait or one value, one lesson, so to speak, out of all these 12 life lessons. If you were to pick from either of those sides, and of course, I feel like that one side is, to me, is there's an obvious answer, but I want to know your thoughts. Pick one lesson from each ladder, and why. What would that be? Why and why?
Great question, Joshua. And you already hit the one. The first one is personal responsibility.
Yes,
Look,
yes,
without that, you won't handle well any of the others in the
yeah,
first five.
mhm,
It's the grounding.
yeah,
See, the problem with the insecurity level is, and you'll see this in people in your life, you can tell their life is two steps forward and three
yeah,
steps back.
yeah,
And they're always in this constant struggle.
yeah,
And if
mhm,
if you go into analysis with them, what you'll find is the further back they go, that insecurity is still locked in a
yeah,
childhood
mhm,
situation.
yep.
And as
Childhood
long as
trauma.
you're there, as long as they're there, there
Mhm,
won't be any progress. And
yeah,
when you're grasping and holding on to that insecurity, it doesn't allow you to be responsible. It always
right.
gives you that excuse or that out why you can't
Always,
be responsible for your
always.
words and your actions.
Hmm.
So that's the one. That's the key, is the personal responsibility. And the second find, uh, it's obvious to me, having lived as long as I've lived, it's truth. You
Wow,
see, the purpose of life is to discover love,
wow,
but the action of love is grounded in truth.
mm,
And
wow,
that's why we're here. Every situation you face is basically asking you, are you willing to come from truth and your highest self in this situation?
wow, wow.
And when we refuse to recognize truth and we refuse to respond truthfully,
Hmm. Hmm.
we just dig that hole deeper and deeper and deeper.
Absolutely. I first of all, I love that because I was about to ask you the question, regardless, by the way, of which lesson you chose. Even if you chose, um, even if you chose any of the other traits, I was going to ask you about love, but I love how you transitioned that. But because truth is the foundation of how we where we put love in, and if we don't have truth, then how can we be true with ourselves? How can we be true to the person that we love? Um, I feel like another common step or lesson in this ladder for both ladders is love. It feels like the end all be all goal in all our endeavors in life. From the experience that you've had and all these other everything that you've gone through in your life, Branch, what is love, what is it that why is it so elusive, and what are we missing when it comes to love?
Well, we don't know what love is. that's that's what's missing. See,
Mhm,
we think we do,
mhm,
and we use the word a lot
mhm,
to apply to a lot of different things.
mhm.
But uh, love, the essence of love is unconditional love,
Wow.
and that's our struggle. You
Mhm.
see, we grow up in a world that buries us under layer upon layer upon layer of desires for worldly things, right?
Yes. Yes.
And
Of
as
course.
long as we're focused on those things, then everything we do is all about me or what's in it for me.
Yeah.
With every choice or decision I make, especially today, it's okay, what am I going to get out of this?
Mhm.
What's in it for me? And as long as we're focused on self, we can't be focused anywhere else.
Yes. Yes.
And so we use the word love in order to get what we want, right? And to get move ahead in our lives.
Mhm.
And what we're missing is we don't understand that it's unconditional love that
Mhm.
is the missing link. That's what's
Yes.
hidden. And if you want to, what happens with unconditional love, uh, I'll give you a great example. If you've got children of any age,
Yeah.
they will do something during your day to make you take issue with their words and actions, right?
Right. Hmm. Hmm.
Well, we often forget at one point in our lives, we were that age too, and we did the
Yes.
same kind of actions and activities.
Yes.
Well, what happened was, however, we were raised and whatever the consequences that we experienced, that's what we take into adulthood, right? And
Right. Of
so
course.
we end up repeating the things that we saw at home.
Yes. Of
If it's
course.
love, then we know what love looks like. If
Yes.
it's abuse, then we know what abuse looks like.
Yes. Yes.
And
Precisely.
I you can ask anybody over 10 years old what loving behavior looks like and what unloving behavior looks like.
Yes.
And they can tell you because we all experience both growing up.
Hmm. Hmm.
What's missing is that awareness that, before I say something or do something that's harmful, especially in my family, to somebody who I claim to love, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
If that's my response and it's not loving behavior, then how can I prove and show that I know what love is? I
Hmm.
can't because,
Yes.
again, that missing link that's love is unconditional love.
Right.
Where do we get unconditional love? It only comes from God. And
Yes.
how do we know he has unconditional love? Because he forgives.
Yes.
And that's the key. We have to be willing to forgive both when we are harmed, which is
Mm-hmm.
hard to do,
Mm-hmm.
especially if it's, been long and tough.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to be able to forgive as as the transgressor. And so if
Yes.
you've got a child who does something and you fly off the handle and you yell at them or you strike them, all you're doing is harm to both yourself and to the other person.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
unconditional love that we should strive for. And I
Yes.
found a cat wandered up to my property almost a year ago.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I have other animals. I've got chickens, I've got two dogs, two cats. Um, and all of my animals came as rescues, and they all suffered trauma, before they ever came to me,
Mm-hmm.
except this cat. This cat wandered out of the woods. Somebody threw him out. I could hold him in his hand. That's how small he was. And he
Oh.
wandered up. And anyway, he finally came in the house. We got him settled. And all he's ever known is love.
Oh.
Um, and his responses
Uh-huh.
are just, everything he does is he comes from a place of love because that's all he knows. My
Wow.
other animals still have trauma, from
Mm-hmm.
whatever they went through before we got them as rescues, and you can see that. And
Right.
unconditional love. He does stuff that makes me crazy too. But before I respond to him in a negative way,
Mm-hmm.
I pause and I think for a moment. What is he trying to tell me? What is he trying to do? So my
Right.
response is very loving to
Mm-hmm.
him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the greatest benefit and blessing for me because, I've struggled for all of my life with the same things we all struggle with.
Right.
I've done irreparable damage to people that I care for. And I am, ashamed and sorry and really regretful.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the old me. And the new me responds coming from my highest loving self in every
Right.
situation. And if
Right.
somebody does something, crazy or cuts me off in traffic or, you know, I stop and I think for a minute, okay, I've done
Okay.
that to people before too. So I
Okay.
know the response,
Uh-huh.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But by responding lovingly,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and sometimes that just means smiling and waving, you
Yes.
know, and not getting involved, not
Mm-hmm.
interacting, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's the loving response. I mean, I run into people all the time, and I smile and I'm polite. And if I can help them, I try to. And if I can't,
Mm-hmm.
I just say, I wish I could help you, but I can't do it. I refuse to go to that negative place.
Yes.
So that's what we're trying to ascribe to is
There you go.
unconditional love. And
Mm-hmm.
unconditional love is grounded in forgiveness. Because
Wow.
when we're able to forgive, we can remember the times that we were both the transgressor and the harmed, right? We play both of those roles. It's just in our nature, it's who we
Of
are as a
course.
species.
Okay.
But by stopping and thinking about, what is that person or that animal going through and what's he trying to tell me, then my
Mm-hmm.
response is different. And my response now is always with everyone I come into my life with to try and give them unconditional love by understanding and then, forgiving their actions and their words because it's not who they really are inside. I know that,
Mm-hmm.
but it's,
Mm-hmm.
who they've been conditioned by the world to be.
Right. Branch, first of all that was beautiful. I love it. It was exactly the insight I was looking forward to on this episode, and we got exactly that. You talk about forgiveness a lot and forgiving as a transgressor, but also I think it's just as important to forgive yourself, right?
Yeah.
Forgive that whatever it is. I mean, it goes back to that first ladder step, right? That first lesson. Born with insecurity, forgive yourself. It's not your fault that you were born with with all of this, because if you can't forgive yourself, you truly cannot love. And that's difficult. And it's already hard enough as it is to love, but we all must aspire for unconditional love. And it's so, so difficult. I don't think it's probably going to be the hardest thing in the world. But I would argue it's even harder to accept love. It's harder to accept love for ourselves. It's especially if, like I said, if all you've known is abuse and trauma, it's going to be a challenge. um I, I really, there's a lot that I could pick apart in this insight and wisdom you're sharing with us today, Branch. But I guess to just wrap this up and to kind of like put this in the ribbon, especially what we just talked about, what you just told to us, unconditional love, self love. You've gone through a lot of experiences, What advice would you give to people who struggle with loving themselves? Because I feel this is the ultimate challenge for everyone. Because if we want to love others around us, we should love ourselves first. With all your experience, Branch, and everything that you've had, what wisdom can you share to us today in order to love ourselves more?
In Hamlet, William Shakespeare's character Polonius
Mhm.
says to his son Laertes, "To thine own
Thine
self
own self
be true."
be true.
And if you can do that, then you can forgive yourself. You can
Mhm.
put that negative stuff, drop that baggage and leave it. The only reason it has power is because you allow it to have that power.
There you go.
So
Mhm.
to thine own self be true. And once you're true to yourself,
Mhm.
then you'll see truth in your world and you
Mhm.
can respond more lovingly to the
Wow,
things and the people in your life.
I love that. You can respond more lovingly to the people and things in your life. Branch, you know, we should do an hour show eventually. We should, there's just, even just this 12 lessons alone, we could take an entire hour and we could just dive deep into it. And there's a lot in there, a lot of wisdom that our audience and listeners can take from. But this has already been, a wealth of wisdom. Thank you so much for being on here. Thank you for so much for sharing this to our audience, and all the love and the insight that you have in the world. It truly shines. And thank you for sharing with us today.
My pleasure, Joshua. Thanks for having me.
To all our audience and listeners out there, I hope you felt the love today. I hope you take away as much as you can, and to, you know, allow it to serve your life so we can serve others more. See you on the next one.
All right, so here's the thing, we try to get a little bit better every day, but we can't do it without you. So if you like the video, make sure to like and subscribe below. And if you have any comments, just leave them in the space under.